This is my 90-second video on my work with OO Gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO Gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N-Gauge and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO Gauge layout. Also see my lengthy series on my N-Gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. This part deals with getting the backdrop for the shelf layout that I'm building into place as best as I was able. This isn't really a proper video of the process, as it was really too difficult for me to deal with properly photographing it as I went along, but I thought I should at least summarize how it went before moving on with other aspects of the shelf layout. As I've mentioned several times in past videos, I was really dreading this process. Putting up back scenes can be difficult enough at the best of times, and Lord knows I've managed to mess them up even when sticking relatively small back scenes to boards over which I had complete control. In this case, I needed to stick up a very large, long back scene to a wall, large sections of which I could barely reach at all, since they were located behind my existing Hornby layout, which isn't movable, and is 4 feet wide, and its edges are mounted permanently to the walls. The process turned out to be about as difficult as I'd anticipated, with some added wrinkles thrown in, both literally and figuratively. I started the process by drawing pencil lines on the wall along the tops of my foam shelf pieces to guide me whilst putting up the backdrop. I drew all along the top of the top shelf pieces, then I removed the top shelf pieces and drew another pencil line along the top of the bottom shelf pieces. I ended up trying to put up the back scene with its lower edge aligned with the pencil line drawn along the top of the lower shelf pieces. Eventually, of course, I completely removed all of the shelf pieces. You can see here that there are 3 pencil lines on the wall. The lowest is the first one that I drew before putting up the shelf brackets using a spirit level. That line was to guide me in putting up the shelf brackets. Above that are the 2 lines that I just drew along the tops of the upper and lower shelf pieces. The area shown here is the most difficult to work with, as I can barely reach it at the level of the shelf, leaning right across the 4-foot width of my current Hornby layout, and when it comes to where the top of the back scene needed to go, 2 feet above the level of the shelf, I couldn't reach the wall at all there. Here's the rest of the length of the shelf layout past the window, across which the back scene is also going to have to go. Again, the 3 lines are there, although it may be a bit difficult to see all 3. I basically tried to get the bottom of the back scene level with the middle pencil line, the one drawn along the top of the lower shelf pieces. If it rose a bit above that, it wouldn't be a problem, but I needed the bottom of the picture to stay below the upper pencil line. I ran into troubles immediately putting up the first piece. This was actually probably the easiest section of the wall to reach, but I hadn't really figured out properly how to put this type of back scene up on a wall. This is an ID back scene from what they call their premium range, which is printed on vinyl sheeting and is self-adhesive with a peel-off backing. Each section is 2 foot high by 5 foot wide. When I put up that first section, I really struggled to peel off the backing and get the scene started on the wall. The scene had a strong spring in it from being rolled in a tube for shipping. When I started to peel off the backing, the scene tried to spring back into a roll and stuck to itself. I managed to unstick it and salvage it and get it onto the wall, but the diagonal white mark on the lower left of the scene here resulted from the self-adhesive backing sticking to the front and pulling off the printing when I tried to get it off. Honestly, I was fortunate to get as little damage as that. When I moved on to the subsequent sections, I came up with a better way of working with the self-adhesive backing and with the sections, which helped a lot. The technique I came up with was this. First, I re-rolled the section the other way round. The sections came with the backing outward and the printed scene inward, so I re-rolled each section with the printed scene outward. I tightened up this re-roll and put the section back into the shipping tube, Then I left it for half an hour or so. This took a lot of the spring out of the piece and made it somewhat easier to handle. The second step was to lay the left end of the section on a piece of wood printed side up and use a long metal straight edge and a sharp knife to cut off the half-inch white border along that left edge. This was necessary so that there wouldn't be a half-inch white line from top to bottom of the scene when I stuck the section up. Next, I turned the section over and scored the back half an inch from the left end. The object here was to mostly cut through the transparent peel-off backing, but not to cut through the vinyl scene itself. Then I peeled off the end half-inch strip of backing, so now I had a half-inch strip along the left edge of the section that was adhesive, while the rest of the section still had its adhesive protected by the peel-off backing. I then used that half-inch sticky strip to stick the section to the wall from top to bottom, aligning it as well as I could with the previous section. Once that strip was firmly stuck, I started to peel off the remaining backing and to smooth the section down onto the wall as I peeled off the backing. For the section going into the corner, I used a Swiffer broom with a clean cloth on it to smooth the scene down onto the wall, as I couldn't reach to do so with my hands directly. Now, whilst I've been going on about all that, you may have already noticed a clue to the next problem that I encountered. I had ordered sections P203A and P203B, sections A and B of the English Village scene in the premium format, and the tubes that came were so labelled. So I put up the two sections of P203A first, and that went okay. The right-hand section joined up nicely with the left-hand section. I didn't get the join perfect, but you can see that join towards the left of this picture. There's a bit of a thin white line top to bottom because I didn't get the overlap perfect. I had to do it with a Swiffer, so it's a miracle I got it as good as I did. But you can see that the photo content of the scene itself fits together perfectly at that join. However, when I took out the sections from the tube labelled P203B, neither of the two sections in that tube seemed to fit together at all with the right edge of the right-hand P203A section. I did my best, but there just wasn't a good match. You can see the join that I made just to the right of the corner in the wall, and you can see that the photographic content really doesn't match at all. There's a big step in the horizon apart from anything else. But the other section in the P203B tube matched even less for that join. I went on sticking the third section right across the window. Not ideal, but what else was I going to do? It was only when I came to put up the fourth section, the last one and the second one from the P203B tube, that I realised the two sections that came in the P203B tube were exactly the same as the sections that came in the P203A tube. I put them up in the reverse order due to my own confusion and trying to match to the right edge of the other section near the corner, but they're actually exactly the same. So the vendor messed up, basically, or the manufacturer. They packed 203A sections into a tube labelled 203B. So now, apart from my own mess-ups, I've got joins in my back scene where the photos don't fit properly together. I did also mess up quite a bit myself. Apart from the place at the left end where I tore off part of the surface struggling with the adhesive backing, I also got quite a few wrinkles in the scene due to problems with evenly peeling off the backing and getting the scene smoothed down onto the wall. By the way, you can see the Swiffer that I used in the bottom right corner of this picture. Here's a close-up of the place where I damaged the printing. I did my best to blend that in with coloured markers. Finally, I put the shelves back into position. The result with the back scene is, well, it's pretty bad in some ways, but given the struggles that I had doing it, it could have been a lot worse. Here's the section round the corner and across the window. The bad joins are in this area, but hopefully they won't be too noticeable, and having the window behind one section actually makes the duplication of the image less obvious, I think. Here's the final section down into the corner. The 20-foot length of the back scene didn't quite reach all the way. There will be a station building at the end eventually. I may try to stick some more sky above there, I'll see. Finally, a few close-ups showing some of the problems. This is the first join that I made, and the only join where the images actually matched up properly. I did get some wrinkles, as you can see, and once you get a wrinkle with the adhesive backing stuck down, it's pretty much impossible to remove the wrinkle. There are some pretty bad wrinkles in the sky by the corner, as turning the scene round the corner using the Swiffer leaning across the Hornby layout was very difficult. You can also see the mismatched join here quite clearly. This is the other side of the window. I had to cut a bit more out of the back of the top foam shelf to fit it around the back scene at the ends of the window frame. There's another mismatched join here, although it's less obvious than the other one, as at least the basic level of the horizon is more or less consistent. And here's the end in the far corner. I'll see what that looks like when I actually have a station to go there, and I may be able to extend the sky a bit. This is just intended as an illustration of how I used the Swiffer to put the sections up, but this makes it look a lot easier than it was, as when I was really doing it, the scene was trying to fall and flap all over the place, and in addition to manipulating the Swiffer, I had to try and hold the rest of the section and to peel off the backing at the same time as the Swiffer smoothed the section down. All in all, I do think for all the faults that things look better with the back scene than they did without it. So I'd have to consider this a partial success. And honestly, I'm glad the damn thing is done with now, so I can move on with actually laying track, although I want to try to improve the joins between the shelving sections a bit before I do that, and I'm still waiting for components that I need for my stations to arrive, and I can't really firm up the positioning of the track until I'm clear about the construction of the stations. One step at a time.